Okay, this is part two of the manufacturing account. So just to restate what we did in part one, we laid out the blank document as it appears here. Then we went down through all of the adjustments at the end of the account. We dealt with the adjustments, and as we were doing the adjustments, any of these figures from the trial balance that we needed to use, we used those and we put those in. So we now have probably about 65, 75% of the marks already gained, actually maybe even more than that, because we've done all the hard stuff, the numbers that were difficult to find. So now we're going through the rest of the numbers that we haven't dealt with. Okay, so factory buildings here. Let's see, was there depreciation of factory buildings? I don't see that mentioned here anywhere. Okay, so factory buildings goes up here. They're 880, and depreciation is 60. That's the difference between the two numbers. So we can do the net book value of 820. Okay. We've dealt with plant machinery already. We have a new figure in. We might as well do the maths for that while we're at it. Again, we're only going to put the numbers in as we can, and we're going to do the maths at the very end if we have time. So discount is on the credit side, so discount, this net discount is either discount received, be more than discount allowed, or vice versa. So in this case it's on the credit side, so therefore that figure is in income. So we go over here to after our gross profit, add other incomes. So I'm going to squeeze in another income there for discount. Now obviously when you're doing this in the exam, if you don't have enough room, just write it to one side and make sure it's obvious that it's in the heading of other incomes. So the discount is 84. Then we have profit and loss balance. So this is the retained profits from previous years. I'd usually expect that to be in the credit side because it's a liability of the business. It's money owed by the business back to the shareholders. Here it's in the debit side, so that means that my profit and loss reserve is a minus. That's a tricky one. It does sometimes come up in the exam. So the opening profit and loss balance we have is minus 18,100. Then we have opening stock. So opening stock of finished goods, 69.5 up here. 69,500. Opening stock of raw materials, 34,4. And then we've got opening stock of work in progress, which is 23,7. Debenture interest, we've already dealt with that figure, we've adjusted that. 4% investment, 340 grand. I don't have that up here, so I'm going to just squeeze that. We have investment, no, this is investments, not investment interest. We've put that in. And we've provided for the investment interest due. And just quickly checking, that investment interest due is a current asset. Okay. Patents, 22.6, so patents aren't in there, I'll put that in. Now, did we adjust our patents anywhere here? Sometimes we'd have an adjustment for patents. No, we don't. Okay, so it's 2,600. The purchase raw materials we dealt with, sales we dealt with, dividends paid 59, and I'm just quickly checking. We've got two different types of shares, so we're going to have to show that this 59 for dividends, some of it is for ordinary and some is for preference. Well, the 10% preference, they get 10% of 500 grand, so they get 50 grand. So the remaining 9 grand is for the ordinary shareholders, and all of it's paid, and there's no mention of dividends being due. So the ordinary, now here we're going to have an extra line here. So we can have net profit here. So the preference dividends we said is minus 50, and the remaining 9 grand is for the ordinary shareholders. So that means 59 grand. That's my 59 grand total. They would expect you to separate them into the two because you're given two different types of shares. While I'm dealing with that, I'll put my shares in as well. So 600 and 500. So I have ordinary shares 600 and 500. I might as well do my authorized and issued. Top of the question, it says authorized 1.8, so it's 1 million ordinary shares and 800,000 preference shares. Where else are we? So we've dealt with dividends, debtors, and creditors. There's creditors. I think we had dealt with debtors already. Yeah. Bank, we've dealt with bank. We've dealt with our 9% debentures, just quickly making sure to put the debentures in 200 grand, and we've got debenture interest due. We've dealt with that. USC, so USC is a liability. It's on the credit side. It's money that we've collected and we owe that money to the government, so it's going to be a current liability. We've dealt with our share capital. Direct factory wages, 180, 400. Just quickly checking, did I deal with those already? I did, so I've already adjusted those. General factory overheads, that would be indirect cost, 31.4. Okay, so we haven't dealt with that. Oh, we forgot to put our loss on disposal. So just quickly check in. So disposal, yeah, we made a loss of 500. So put that figure in there. So I'm just going to squeeze in an extra line. So that's general factory overheads, 31,400. Then we have hire special equipment. So this is special equipment, is something that I needed specifically for making stuff. So I'm going to add that in here with my prime cost. It's an extra cost in there. Um, 6.1. Then we have sale of scrap materials, 3 grand. So that's down here. It's taken away from a manufacturing cost. Carriage and raw material. So that will be added up here in my purchase raw material. So I'll have carriage as well. And 4.6. Administration, we've dealt with the suspense. I'm just quickly making sure we've put administration expenses in there. We have. Selling expenses, incorporating the 3 months investment income. So that should have been in there. So I obviously didn't put that in when I dealt with it. Depreciation. No, did I not deal with my suspense? Suspense figure, debenture interest, all the correct figure. Depreciation. Okay, so I obviously never finished my suspense account down here in my suspense. So debenture interest, correct entry in the bank account. So 1,000 was entered only in the debtors. So I've got 4,500 in here was the amount that we paid, whereas up here somewhere it says that the debenture interest the first 4 months was 4.8. So that means there's going to be a 300 on the credit side to bring that down to the figure that it should have been, which is 4.5, which I calculated in the first video. So if I've got a credit here to make that 4.5, I must have a debit in my administration, which includes my suspense. Oh, sorry, I have done that. Sorry. No, it's the selling expenses incorporating 3 months investment income. I didn't deal with that. Yeah, sorry. So I know that my investment income, I have investment interest due. So I obviously never dealt with my selling expenses, which should be in here. Sorry about that, got confused which one I was looking at. So my selling expenses at the moment is 32,900. The investment income would have been put in here because it's an income. It would have been put in as a credit. So to get rid of it and put it into its own investment income account, I'll have a debit entry, and it would be 3 months investment income. So that's a quarter of the amount I should have got for a year. The 4% investments, which I got at the beginning of this year, so I'll have a full year's interest. They're worth 340 grand. 4% of 340 grand is the figure I would have put in as interest. So that's 13,600. So a quarter of that has to be added on to my selling expenses. Remember, I'm debiting it to take it out of selling expenses and put it into a new investment income account, which is the figure that ends up over here in my balance sheet. So selling expenses is going to be 32.9 plus now what is it? So the investment interest is 13,600, and you get a quarter of 13,600 is added on. So that's what's that there. And now we've dealt with the rest of it. Okay, so at this stage, if you have time in the exam, remember you only have 50 minutes to do it. We've now got the vast majority of the marks calculated. Only then do you go along and you do your adding and subtracting. So I'll add up all of my the figures here. I'm trying to work out my cost raw materials. So I've got the money I spent less my closing stock raw materials. That's my cost raw materials. So I'll put that in the wrong place. Then we have manufacturing wages and the equipment hire. So there are other direct costs. So I'll add that and that gives me prime cost. So then I've got all of my expenses. Now, closing work in progress is a minus, so I'm just going to make sure that's taken away. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll add up all of these expenses here first before I deal with my open and closing work in progress. So we have that number. Then what I'm going to do is I'll add to that the 23, take away the 27, and that'll give me the figure that goes down here. So that plus the opening work in progress and minus the closing work in progress. No, that's wrong. So that number plus opening work in progress, and we have that. Sales scrap materials is -3, so I'll take that away. So there's my, okay, now here sometimes I might give you in a manufacturing account question, I might give you the market value of the goods that we've produced, what they're actually worth. If they give that, then you put your market value here, and the difference between the market value and what we spent making it, that will give us our manufacturing profit. That manufacturing profit will be added down here, okay, at the end. Now in this question we don't have any, so I'm going to blank that out. So this 126, that's going to be put in for the market value of the goods produced down here. So I'll get rid of the market value, and we just end up with cost of manufacture. Sometimes that does come up in some questions. So the cost of manufacture is the figure I have above. So there's my gross profit. So I'll add on my other incomes. then my expenses. So before I get to my financial expenses, I'd have to have my operating profit. So I'll add up all of my expenses so far. So that's the distribution and the administration expenses. I'll take those away from the figure above, and that gives me my operating profit. Then we'll have our debenture interest. So I'll take the debenture interest away, and that will give me my net profit. Now my dividends. So I'm taking away, I've put my opening profit loss balance in the wrong place. So my net profit, taking away my dividends, gives my retained profit. My opening balance is a minus, so we'll end up with a closing figure of 166. So that 166 is in finance by, so that's reserves. Again, you only do this if you have the time in the exam, and don't get bogged down if it turns out the numbers don't add up. So going to my balance sheet, then I have my Now, I must say at this stage, my fixed assets, normally I'd expect you to put in the 3 different headings. So you've got tangible fixed assets, which would be buildings and plant and machinery, intangible fixed assets, which is patents, and then financial fixed assets, which is the investment here. You normally separate the 3, but I didn't because I was stuck for time. So we move on to our current assets, and then our current liabilities. Working capital. So and there's our finance by. So you can see that we're out by a certain amount. Normally what I would do is, if I have the time, only if you have the time, I might take the 2 away, and I see that I'm missing 3,400. I'll have a quick look through the question and see, is there something worth 3,400 that I haven't put in? I don't see it now, so I'm just going to leave it at this stage. Okay, I hope that makes sense and you see the logic of what we're